episode should come with a warning. John Kennelly isn't holding back or adding any fluff today. If you launched a business, you need to hear his advice about founder-led sales.
I think a lot of founders have that moment where they realize, like, uh-oh, I'm a salesperson now. The choices are be a salesperson or put on that green open to work banner and get ready to go get a job.
If you've ever shouted, "I hate sales," while doom strolling LinkedIn, today's episode is going to feel like therapy to you. John Kennelly is the founder of I Hate Sales, where he helps brilliant founders stop avoiding sales and start owning it. Hello, John. Want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about I Hate Sales?
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to do it. Appreciate the chat today. Looking forward to it. So, my background, I've been not surprisingly in sales for the majority of my career. Spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, lived in San Francisco for 10 years, did the startup journey there. My first job in sales was at, like a lot of people, as an SDR, cold calling, setting appointments. When I first started in sales, I was like painfully shy to the point where, like, if we were ordering a pizza, I wouldn't want to pick up the phone to do that. So, started with wanting to work at a startup and not really having any other skills other than, even I didn't even have that skill. The only job I could get at a startup was entry level sales, and just kind of dove in, even though I really expected, well, I'll just do this for a few months and then I'll get a better job inside the startup, right? I'll get my foot in the door. And yeah, kind of fell in love with it from the beginning and really felt like it turned a weakness into a strength very quickly. And then I've just been kind of riding that wave ever since. Been through a lot of the peaks and valleys of the startup journey. Was part of a startup that got bought by Google, another one that got bought by Apple. Also co-founded a startup that we built to 20 million in revenue, and then COVID essentially wiped out and we had to shut down. So, kind of seen it all on the startup front, and have now really just dedicated myself and my business to helping founders avoid a lot of the pitfalls that I think we all know are out there, and really just try to transform people's relationship with sales. I love it. I really am just kind of like a sales nerd and constantly like letting people pitch me and just absorbing as much sales content as I can. And I think a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to sell. So that's a lot of what I spend my time doing, is just kind of lifting the veil. Hopefully that rant was a good intro on me.
So you went from shy to call the pizza guy to now teaching other people how to sell.
Correct. I mean, over the course of, 14 years, but yes, I mean, truly, like, couldn't believe it on my first day in sales when they were like, cool, here's the people you need to call and their phone numbers. I was like, excuse me? I don't know these people. They were like, okay, well, there's the door or there's the phone. So,
Hated cold calling. I was so
yeah,
scared. I would like, because we still had handheld phones,
of
and
course, me too.
you
The,
know,
the 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 same Cisco phone that everybody had.
I'd be like crouching as low as I can and hunching so that people wouldn't around me wouldn't hear, trying to do the script. Some kid behind me was like, "Just shout it. Everybody's making a mistake. Just shout into the phone. No one cares." I was like, "Oh, okay." But
The
it's
worst
terrifying.
thing ever, and I can't believe this functionality existed. Our phones used to have a feature that I guess was mostly for managers, but they put it on everyone's phone, called barging calls. I don't know if you ever did this, but you could literally, from any desk in our office, like, add yourself to someone's call. Our sales team would, like, kind of, sorry for saying it, fuck with each other. And like, if you saw across the office someone was on a sales call, you'd click barge, click their extension, and sit there and listen, and sometimes breathe heavily into your phone. So that didn't help. As someone who was already a little nervous about being on the phone, I certainly didn't enjoy having people mess around. But obviously, in hindsight, those are amazing memories. They were not very enjoyable at the time, but yeah.
It's like Tiger Woods' dad screaming at him while he's practicing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and shout out to you for making a golf reference already. 5 minutes in, you know your guest very well here.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
So why would someone who's super brilliant and started a cool company, has an awesome product, still hate sales?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from, I would say, two things. Most of the time, people that hate sales have never done it before. I think a lot of founders, whether they're starting a service business or a product business, they've found a niche that they love, a skill set that they love using, and they say, okay, this is what I want to spend all of my time doing. However, in order to earn that right, you got to get people to pay you for it, right? So I think a lot of founders have this moment where they leave a corporate job or what have you. They leave, they hang their own shingle, and they're like, "Yay, I'm a founder. How am I going to get people to pay me for this? Do I have to sell?" I think a lot of founders have that moment where they realize, like, "Uh oh, I'm a salesperson now." And then I think the other part that causes people to hate sales is just because there's so much bad sales happening every day, especially if your LinkedIn says founder or chief anything on it, right? Your DMs and your email are bombarded with a lot of garbage. And I think if you receive a lot of that, it creates even more fear to go out into the market and sell. Well, what if people think I'm spammy and salesy like this? I don't want to do that. So I would say those are kind of the two main reasons why a lot of people end up hating sales. That sort of fear and just the disdain for all the bad tactics that they see kind of coming in their direction.
Did you ever have somebody say, when all else fails, sales to you?
No, no,
Okay.
I haven't heard that, but I like it.
Well, I've failed a lot of it's basically like if your dreams fail, you can always become a salesperson. So I had a bunch of ambitions when I was younger, like I'm gonna be a rock star. And they didn't work out. And I went to sales and people kept chirping it at me. And I was like, but this is great. I can basically the harder I work, the more money I can make. So I don't understand why there's so much beef.
Yeah, and I think people fail to understand that, like, sales is happening 24/7, 365. We are constantly being sold to. Sales works, right? Like, I mean, everyone, I'm sitting in a house that someone sold me on a computer that I bought from some, like, it's ubiquitous, right? So I think, it's a very transferable skill set that I think is, I mean, of course, I'm extremely biased in saying that, but I think there's a lot of kind of evidence out there to support, how transferable the skill set is.
If you work with a founder and they say, I'm just not a salesperson, what's the first thing that you say to them?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's actually my business has changed a lot in that I used to work with founders who said that and then come in and sell for them and say, "Oh, no problem. You don't need to become a salesperson." People want to buy from the boss, right? People want to buy from the inventor, the person, especially early stage companies that are not yet over like that million in revenue hump. Um, I guess what I would say is your choices are be a salesperson or put on that green open to work banner and get ready to go get a job. I think those are the two options. If you're a founder, become a salesperson or, you know, start talking to recruiters and look for a corporate job. That's obviously kind of extreme, but I think that's the reality. I think founder led sales is incredibly important. And like I said, I think a lot of founders fail to realize that's what they're signing up for, and so those are your two options: update your resume or learn to sell. In my opinion.
Tough love.
Yeah.
You're hearing it here.
Hey, I mean, I have hate in the name of my company, so you know what you're signing up for anytime you engage with me.
Yeah, for sure. For your personal sales journey, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind for me on this, I mean, we were kind of talking about it via email before we jumped into the recording. Like, I've made hundreds, maybe thousands of mistakes. It's hard to pick one, but the one that always stands out to me is early in my sales career. That first job I had where I was an SDR, I got promoted to account executive, finally had my own book of business. We were selling, this was like social media marketing software that was like had an incredibly high margin. And the commission was like Wild West, super high commission, 20% commission on deals. I was prospecting an account, a really well known CPG company that nobody in our company had been able to break through into before, and I just kind of made it my life's mission. I'm gonna win this deal. I don't know if you remember when accounts used to kind of like drop out of people's names and you could pick them up in your CRM. Like this account like dropped. I picked it up. I went through and just kind of like just did a crazy amount of prospecting and broke through. Brought a deal all the way to the contract stage. Sent out a contract for I think 50K, 20% commission, looking at a 10K check at a time when I was living in San Francisco. Living paycheck to paycheck even would be generous, right? Like living off of credit cards. a 10K commission check just would have changed my life, right? Um, the person I was selling to brought that back to their team. Somebody on their team pulled up an email from me where I talked about our pricing. This was a cold email. I had never met with this person. They never even responded to this email. But the email said $30,000, not 50 for an annual license. And the reality was like our prices were kind of silly. There wasn't a ton of justification. We technically had two different tiers at 30 and 50, but the differences between them were not material. And so they emailed me back and said, "Hey, we're super excited to get started, but it'll have to be at the 30K price point." And so, I still closed the deal. I was kind of a hero for winning this brand, but personally, that 20K difference resulted in 4,000 less dollars for me. That was a couple months rent. That was painful. And so the lesson being there was absolutely no need to put pricing in that cold email that I had sent that person. Like I said, they never even responded. I never even met that person. I forgot I sent the email, but it literally cost my company 20 grand and it cost me 4 grand. So I think that stands out as just like in the grand scheme of life that I will live without that money. But at the time, it turned like a very great achievement into just like a complete gut punch. And so I'll never forget that. And I think it's important to just be impeccable with your word when it comes to especially things that you're writing down.
For sure. First off, rules of engagement when things drop out of your name. I wasn't shy about being a shark. Like if there was an account that I wanted and someone was just like gently touching it or never touching it every 30 days, yeah, I'm going to work that. I want to make the money. I want to sell the deal. So nice job getting in there.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
The question, if you don't have a software where you're saying, okay, here, or maybe not software, you rent porter potties to events. If you don't have the pricing listed in tiers or listed on the website, what's some advice you would have for how to approach those initial calls where you haven't done anything and they just say, "What's the price?"
Yeah. So as a side note, I feel like porta potties for events must be just one of those like phenomenal businesses that like I kind of wish I was in because it just seems like a great, like gross, but also like there's a need and probably people pay a premium for that. So just a random kind of tangent there. In terms of how to handle pricing, I mean, I think I'm actually very much I'm going to contradict myself pretty quickly here. I'm actually in favor of giving people a sense for a range of your price. But the mistake that I had made that cost me 4 grand is we were not airtight on what justified the two tiers of our pricing, right? If you're going to have a range of pricing, be very clear about why product A costs one thing and product B costs another thing and who each tier is for, right? I think that's being transparent with pricing is okay as long as you're ready to explain the difference, right? The reason I cost myself 4 grand was when they were like, "Hey, what's the difference between these two products?" I was like, you get two more seats for $50,000. They were like, that doesn't seem. We'll just have less people use this. So I think that's what I would say is I do think it's important to do some level of pre-qualifying people on budget, right? You don't want to waste your time. So I think it's kind of a delicate balance of you don't want to undercut yourself, right? You don't want to quote someone 10K when they've got budget for 20. But I also think like I'm a believer in kind of the old adage of you can shear a sheep many times, but skin it only once, right? Like I would much rather sell someone something for a little bit less money and increase that possibility that I can sell them something else, a few months later, right? I think that sort of contradicts what I said about my biggest mistake, but I think if you're going to talk about pricing, just be ready to defend it anytime you mention it.
I had a follow-up, but it has escaped me. I went like 7 different places through sales nightmares while you were telling that story. I'm sorry. It was like
No problem.
back in the SDRC. All right. One thing that has been a hot topic for you this week has been AI in sales, especially AI note takers.
Holy cow. You're not kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think I learned something this week about the internet that maybe I already knew, uh, but it definitely made me a little bit sad is that, like you just gotta like make incredibly hot takes and rage bait people on the internet and people will flock, right? Like I literally posted on LinkedIn that I personally do not see the value in AI note takers, and I believe at times they cause people to be less engaged in meetings because the AI will take the notes, and it's like that's fine. I don't even really need to pay attention. I was very clear to say this is my personal opinion. I'm referring to client meetings. I said I don't use them in client meetings, and I said if you enjoy them, more power to you. If you think they work for you, I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum, right? This was all in the post. Fast forward a couple days, that post was 2 or 3 days ago. I'm literally still getting just lit up by people telling me what a moron I am and how great AI note takers are and how they do such a phenomenal job of letting people focus and not worry about taking notes. So what the learning there is like people read the parts of a LinkedIn post that they want to read, right? Like everybody skipped over the part where I said, if you are in favor of using AI note takers, use them. Like, like so, yeah, I mean, I think the reason for the post was just like, first of all, like I see another Fireflies AI note taker in my Google Meet. Like I just like seeing them over and over again. Also, the fact that oftentimes people will no show a meeting, but like their AI will show up. That especially just like drives me like up a wall. But the whole point of it was like, I believe, and there's actually like psychology to support that people retain information better when they're writing it down. I have a notebook there you go. Yeah, I've got my notebook, just within arm's reach at all times. And I think I do a better job when I'm writing down key points. And yeah, it just turned into like World War III in the comments. I got ratioed into oblivion at the post got like 70 likes and 180 comments or something ridiculous like that. And so, I think all that to say, right? Part of what we were kind of talking about earlier in terms of the reason why people hate sales, I think AI has kind of poured gasoline on that, right? I think a lot of, AI has increased the volume of cold emails that we're all getting, right? Which has drastically decreased the overall effectiveness of cold email. I used to be a huge fan of that medium. Now it's extremely hard to break through via cold email. It's much easier to break through on LinkedIn. And so I think overall, as a productivity tool in terms of doing admin work or, deep research with chat gpt stuff like that, I'm like massively in favor of using AI. But when it comes to selling, this is of course an opinion that favors me and my business. I think the human aspect of selling is only going to continue to get more important as things become more and more automated and more AI driven. I think people still want to talk to a person, right? And so, yeah, I think, I certainly learned a lesson this week about how much people love their their AI note takers. It was pretty wild.
I'm anti. Okay, if ChatGPT is asking us to please stop saying please and thank you because it's costing millions of dollars and taking up so much energy and killing the planet, think of how many meetings are getting taped by Fathom or Fireflies and nobody's going back and listening to them. Nobody's going back and looking at them. So why are they taping them?
Yeah,
Why?
I agree. I think it's pretty wasteful. I think they're probably very select. Like, listen, if you're, head of product or someone building software, especially custom software, and you're in a meeting talking about collecting requirements, yeah, record, right? Make sure you don't miss a thing, right? I can see the value there, right? Meetings where there's a dozen people and you want to feel like you have a good sense for what happened. Okay. I just think, yeah, to your point, I think people might not realize how little they're actually going back and looking at the transcripts, right?
For sure. Do you think that this is from a sales perspective? Do you think that paranoia is one of the reasons salespeople and sales leaders are encouraging hey, have your fireflies, or I hate to pick on them every time, have your otter AI on in every meeting. Like, does the leader need to watch and go through what the salesperson's saying? Or are they trying to catch something that the prospect or customer says? What's the reason for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we live in a, we're the anxious generation, right? I mean, I'm in my kind of mid late 30s, right? Like I think people like anxiety is a term you hear a lot more that you didn't used to hear, and I think people live in fear of, well, if I don't hear every single word this person said, the world is going to end, right? Or to your point, a sales manager, well, I got to make sure that I know, every word that's coming out of my sales rep's mouth, right? Like, I'm not sure that level of scrutiny is healthy. I don't think putting myself in the shoes of, an account executive with a sales manager who's watching my recordings, I would be beyond nervous on those calls. And I think for me, it would be counterproductive. I would feel like someone's eyes are on me at all times. So yeah, I think it's for sure comes from a place of, paranoia or anxiety that I think is kind of systemic at this point. And I'm not sure it's productive. But I mean, quite frankly, like I haven't worked on a sales team in a really long time, right? I've kind of been out on my own doing my thing for a while. So I'm a little bit out of touch in some ways, right? I've never used Gong before. Everybody uses Gong. I've actually never used it before, right? Maybe it's, must be doing something right. I think they're pretty big now. So yeah, I think, I'm certainly not as in the weeds on all the tools now, but I do think to answer your question, there's definitely like everyone's very anxious and probably overdoing it a little bit.
I remember when you'd have to do like someone would listen in on your cold call or train like a ride along if you ever did you ever do door to door
Yeah.
sales? So like
Never door to door, but like, I mean, a lot of in person,
okay.
sales.
So if the manager's there, they can coach you after or just,
Yeah.
I feel like that's more helpful than I'm gonna watch late tonight, and they're not even watching
It also
anyways.
just creates all this extra work, right? For managers that I wouldn't want to do if I was a sales manager.
What's the worst DM that you've ever gotten?
Oh, good question. I used to do something called spam stories where I actually made videos on LinkedIn and took screenshots of cold outreach and like just roasted it. Just like screenshotted it, like and just was like, here's what not to do. I also did videos where I would take great examples of cold outreach and talk about how great it was. Shocker, the ones where I was roasting people performed a lot better. I think what comes to mind is and I made a video about this. There was a guy who literally sent me cold DMs for 6 years, like six straight, not every day, but like maybe once a month for 6 years. Like anything he was working on, like I think he had like changed jobs or like, it was literally just 6 straight years of this guy. Like I never responded once.
Like,
And
you could have gotten pregnant and had a child, and the child is about to go into kindergarten. That's how long he's
100%.
been doing it.
Yeah, let's see if I can find his messages right here on the fly. No, I must have like blocked him eventually. But yeah, I mean truly it was just like 6 straight years of nonsense, right? And I never responded. I mean, I think the takeaway for me that I should have done, I encourage people to do this and I just like didn't take my own advice. Just tell someone to stop messaging you. Like if it's really bothering you, just say like, "Hey, take me off your list," or like, "I'm not interested." Right? Like it's totally okay to say it. In fact, like we prefer it. Salespeople prefer it. Right? Like I'll probably end up, I don't do more than a couple of cold touches before I just move on. But if I get a hell no on the first touch, that's great, right? I'm like all about the quick no. I never gave this guy a no, and he never took the hint that my silence meant I wasn't interested. But yeah, that probably sticks out as just like to just keep grinding in my DMs for 6 years. Like eventually I made a video about him and
It's
publicly
amazing.
shamed him. But yeah, I think I haven't gotten the DM from him since. So I think he understood.
So, in terms of saying no to salespeople, I know we're encouraging founders, you need to actually be a salesperson and also kind of shaming some sales tactics, but this is what not to do. When I get a cold call, and I accidentally answer thinking it's someone I'm supposed to talk to, or if I get a message, I go out of my way now to give them a real reason why I'm disqualified. Cause I don't want them to say, she said no, but like, she's not disqualified yet. I'm like, this is why you should put me as disqualified in your CRM. I am a business of this size. I am not, so like, please save your time. Don't call me 5 times. Don't try to keep me in your rules of engagement 30-day touch. Don't worry about it.
I mean, exactly, right? That is something only someone who's on this side of the equation would do, right? Because I think you're doing them a huge favor. You're saving them time and you're saving yourself time, right? And I think the reality is you're doing the person on the other side of the computer a favor and yourself a favor when you just get out in front of this and say no, right? The worst thing as a salesperson is to get ghosted, right? It just causes you to waste your time.
And it feels bad and it hurts
Yeah.
your confidence.
Yeah, but I think also the flip side of that, and this goes back to like why founders don't want to go out and sell. If you pitch someone and they ignore you, you're right back where you started. And like you're not going to bump into that person at the grocery store. They're not going to think that you're dumb or weird. Like if you get ghosted, it's fine. No one cares. So I think that's also something, as much as getting ghosted does suck, especially if it happens later in a sales process, right? You send a proposal, you're excited about it, you get ghosted. That's another level. Otherwise, like if we're talking about like cold outreach or top of funnel stuff, get ghosted, like just send another message to someone else. Keep it moving. It's really not a big deal.
You had a post, I don't know if it was out today, it was recently about no one's paying attention to you. And if you knew how many times I have pitched, even had demos, like full meetings, in person meetings with people, and gone through the sales process and they said no, for them to come back to me inbound and not even either not remember or pretend they don't remember. It's just like people are so busy with their own lives that as long as they don't say, this is why I'm not a fit, please don't call me again, they're probably going to forget that you called them. They're probably going to forget that you emailed them. Just keep giving valuable, truthful lessons when you do go talk to them again.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess I was gonna say I agree, but you kind of referencing my post. So I agree with myself on that. But yeah, I mean, I really think it's a byproduct of, I mean, even what you and I are doing right here, right? Everyone has a literal microphone now. And so I think it's easy to get a little lost in the sauce and think that, everyone can kind of think that they're on their own little personal stage with the spotlight on them. Like, there's a lot going on out there. Everyone's got lives they're trying to live and businesses they're trying to build. Like, don't worry about it, right? Like, if something, if you mess up on a demo or, put a typo in an email, like the other person's going to forget about it immediately. So, like, don't worry about it. And that's like a great example of something I posted more for myself than for anything, right? I think it's advice that everyone needs to hear. And I kind of needed to hear it that day. So I just posted it.
Hey, you got to give. Sometimes when you're giving out, it's actually to yourself, which is nice.
100%.
Hey. All right. Final thoughts. Selling doesn't have to feel gross, but ignoring it absolutely costs you.
Definitely doesn't have to feel gross. And I think it starts like very much at the beginning with what is the problem you solve and who do you solve it for, right? Like sounds very basic, but I do think, especially in tech, but I think in general, people miss that step, right? Of like, oh, well, I have this widget and it works so beautifully that everyone can use it and everyone's going to love it. It's like, it's not how it works, right? Like you got to start with a very specific customer and a very specific problem that you are better than anyone in the world at solving, and slowly build from there, right? Like I think like I don't know if you ever read like the Everything Store, but like Amazon was an online bookstore, and it was the first business they had, and like now it's like $1 trillion behemoth that does 8,000 different things. But they started really small with something very, very specific, and I think literally every business can learn from that. Of you have to start with what problem do you solve and who do you solve it for, and get crazy specific about what that looks like. Your customer is not tech companies. Your customer is US based tech companies with sales teams smaller than 10 doing 2 to 4 million dollars in revenue, right? That is an ICP. And if you start there and you're solid with the problem that you solve, like maybe I've just convinced myself that this is how it works, you're doing people a favor by trying to sell to them, right? If you truly solve a specific problem for a specific person and you've validated it, you're doing them a favor by trying to sell them something. You genuinely are. It's not gross at all. If you nailed both of those things, if someone hears from you that fits your customer profile and they hear, hey, we hear from a lot of companies blank, we help them stop blank. I would love to talk. I would be over the moon to hear from someone if they structured it that way, right? It's not gross at all. It is, there is a gap. I fill the gap. Here's how much it costs to fill the gap. Would you like to talk? Right. I think it's really, it can be that simple, but I think instead what we are bombarded with daily is, hey, nice to meet you. I run an AI powered widget builder with a whoosy what's it, and it's the world class, world changing. Like, what? What are you even saying? Right? That feels gross, right? And yeah, the risk of ignoring it is not making any money, right? Like I think there's a real movement of growth hacking and, oh well, I'll just become an influencer on LinkedIn and then the leads will just flow to my website. Oh, I'll do paid ads, right? Like that's another thing. I think people really jump levels of like, I'll just spend money or I'll just hire a fractional head of sales. Or I think you can't really replace that early sales motion and that early customer discovery. And I think founders either figure that out or they put on the green open to work banner. I think those are the two options. So I think you can't risk not doing it. And at the same time, I understand why people don't want to do it. Right? If you've never done it, it's pretty scary.
Feels uncomfortable. I mean, even
Yeah.
doing this, like, hello. I talk with my hands a lot. I feel awkward. I sweat when I'm on camera. Like, there are a lot of things that are preventing me every day from wanting to do this. But Jen Gottlieb, who's an influencer, said, if you have something to offer people, it's your responsibility to get out and show it to them. Give them the option to say no to you. So if you've got a product that's going to change somebody's life, go sell it. Go show it to them.
It's irresponsible not to. Yeah.
Don't be a dick.
Nice. I would wear a t-shirt with that on it for sure.
All right, I've got a rapid fire round. One founder you think nails sales.
I mean, I think someone who have been a fan of for a while, who's built a really amazing company, is Sam Jacobs. I mean, Pavilion is essentially a community for sales leaders. And like, if you're going to build a product or a service selling to salespeople, you better be bulletproof on your sales tactics, right? And he most definitely is. So I think that's someone who's just like absolutely killing it and has built a really cool personal brand and built a really amazing community. And so yeah, I think just he's the first name that comes to mind, just because especially selling to salespeople, yeah, that's a bit of a hill to climb, and he obviously has just done a phenomenal job at that.
What's his name and company again?
Sam Jacobs, Pavilion.
Pavilion. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Finish the sentence. Growth happens when.
You get uncomfortable.
And final one. What's one thing you are learning or working on this
I
year?
mean, I'm kind of turning my business upside down and selling a selling a cohort that is I've not done that before. It's a different type of sell, but it's I think the path forward for me. So I'm learning how to do it. And yeah, it starts in July. So uh, it's going to start in July one way or another. It's going to be me by myself on Zoom, or it's going to be me and you know some 50 or so people on Zoom. We'll see. But yeah, that's new territory for me. But I've had enough people tell me that that's what I need to be doing, that I'm just gonna put my head down and do it.
Get uncomfy.
Yeah.
It would be a very cozy cohort if it was just you, but I have a feeling it's going to
Yeah.
be a lot bigger.
It's going to launch in July either way, and that nothing's changing that. It's either going to launch empty in July or launch full in July. So we'll see.
I have good feelings. All right.
Okay.
Well, I think we're going to have another session where we talk just about LinkedIn because there are many layers to that onion.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with founders and leaders all over the place. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Chelsea.